In the last section, I mentioned three streams of thought on the way forward: the technological, the degrowth, and the social justice approach. The socialist justice paradigm points to the failure of the technological approach. One aspect being that, in the past, improvements in technology have tended to increase disparities as the economic benefits of improvements are captured by a small group in society. And at the same time, while the degrowth approach recognizes the need for a better distribution of wealth, it is not clear that it will foster this in and of itself. This is why the environmental justice movement emphasizes the reappropriation of indigenous lands, reparations for past inequities, ensuring that disadvantaged communities do not bear the brunt of the adverse impacts when they do not acquire a fair share of associated benefits. It also calls for a shift of power and wealth within global society so that it is more equally distributed. The issue of equity contributed to the failure of the 2009 climate talks in Copenhagen. No agreement could be reached on how to assign historical responsibility. In 2015, the Paris Agreement did make progress on this aspect, but the national defined contributions to greenhouse gas emission reductions are voluntary, and until now, neither actual reductions or commitments are sufficient to ensure that we meet the goal of keeping global warming well below 2 degrees Celsius. It is true that in the past year, countries have announced goals of net zero by 2050. However, the paths needed to get there have not been identified, so it's hard to know if these commitments will actually be achieved. So, what is the responsibility of people currently living in high emission countries, that is, the US, UK, and other rich countries, for the emissions of their ancestors? Consider the current per capita GDP of Shanghai. It is close to that of the Netherlands. So, is it fair for people living on low income in the Netherlands to pay a carbon tax, while middle and high income people in Shanghai do not, or pay a smaller one? Should the cost of emissions be tied to the producer or to the consumer? What is clear is that household income is the best correlate for carbon emissions. If you are rich, it does not matter where you live, you have a high carbon footprint. The richest 10% of people in the world are responsible for around 50% of global greenhouse emissions. It will not be possible to effectively reduce greenhouse gas emissions or maintain our ecological footprint below planetary boundaries without ensuring social equity. I say that because as long as groups of people have access to and use more than their fair share of resources, others will want and fight to do the same. While equity is central, coming to an agreement has been elusive. In part, this is because the position of each group or nation is primarily driven by self-interest, which makes it difficult to get a solution that all sides agree is fair. I will pause here with a question. Are we doing equity properly? I will start with a few observations. In spite of the US civil rights movement that flourished in the 1960s, in 2020 we have the need for Black Lives Matter. I always thought that sexism would be an easier issue to address. Yet, after more than 50 years of the modern feminist movement, we still have reports of the glass ceiling. Women still earn less than men, and we have the Me Too movement. A portion of the US white population feels alienated and disenfranchised. If we look at life expectancy in the US, it has stagnated or even decreased in the last 20 years. What is driving this trend? There continues to be a large gap between Black and white Americans overall, but this gap has been narrowing. If we look at the mortality of poor white Americans, poor white males in particular, we see an increase in early death. And this increase accounts for the overall decrease in life expectancy we have seen over this period. And this is a demographic that feels abandoned by the elites and who consider Donald Trump their champion. These and other observations make me ponder if we as a society or progressive movement are approaching equity in the right way. It seems to me to have created greater divisions than bring stronger solidarity. What if we build on the fact that greater equality equals better health for all? It is well known that overall, people with higher incomes have better health compared to people with lower income. In addition, the evidence shows that countries with smaller income inequalities have better health overall. Not only does lower income inequality result in improved health for people with lower income, it also improves the overall health of individuals with higher income. Therefore, this suggests that wealthier households should have an interest in decreasing social inequities. Can a shared interest in better health and well-being be a way to mobilize common ground for improved equity and environmental justice? Taking such an approach would be in line with what Simon Sinek advocates, which I mentioned in the first part of this reflection. So why not build on the fact that to be healthy people, we need a healthy planet? The transformation that is required to minimize global warming is momentous. We must not deny that. It is not easy. However, modern society has seen similar rapid change in technology before. The shift from horse-drawn carriages as a main source of transport to motor vehicles in the US. The system we live in is a mix of positives and negatives. As we work for change in the destructive ways of our modern world, let's remember the good things that societies, including indigenous ones, have created, and the benefits these have provided to humanity, and work on finding ways to improve our relationship with the earth, with other creatures on the planet, and among ourselves by building on shared interest for a better world. In summary, I would say, we who advocate for environmental change and social justice need to have enough humility to reach out instead of opposing, to seek to understand where people are coming from and start from where they are. Find the common ground. A common goal could be greater fairness and better health for all. Acknowledge the positives of the current world as we work to remove the negatives. And do not assume to know all the solutions. Be open to try different approaches and see if they work. Thank you.